Hello and welcome to the Christ Lutheran Church Sermon Podcast. This is Matthew Best. I serve as pastor of Christ Lutheran Church in Allison Hill in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks for being here. If today's message connects with you and what you're going through, brings you inspiration, or offers connection with God, I ask you to please stay on after the message for just a few moments to learn ways to connect with the congregation and the health ministries that we offer. And now, let's dive into God's Word. Our reading today comes from 1 Kings, chapter 19, verses 1 to 18. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life like the life of the one by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid. He got up and fled for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. He left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a solitary broom tree. He asked that he might die. "It is enough now, O Lord. Take away my life, for I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the broom tree and fell asleep. Suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Get up and eat." He looked, and there at his head was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came a second time, touched him, and said, "Get up and eat, or the journey will be too much for you." He got up and ate and drank. Then he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. At that place he came to a cave and spent the night there. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." He said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sure silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then there came a voice to him that said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." Then the Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael as king over Aram. Also you shall anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, as king over Israel. And you shall anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, of Abel-Meholah, as prophet in your place. Whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, Jehu shall kill, and whoever escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha shall kill. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. As I mentioned this morning, we're gathering for All Saints Sunday, and I want to begin with a thought from a song that you might know, "The Sound of Silence," if you're familiar with that song, right? Some of you might remember the original version from Simon and Garfunkel. It's quiet, it's reflective, it's a soft meditation on loneliness and isolation. There's a newer rendition of this, which is very different, and it's by the rock band Disturbed. Any Disturbed fans? I'm not, but I will tell you that this rendition of The Sound of Silence is powerful. In fact, there was an interview, I think, with Paul Simon, who said this is the way it was supposed to be sung. You might want to look it up. Don't be afraid because of the name Disturbed. That the lead singer, David Draymond, has an incredible voice. And for this song, his voice is very raw. And there's parts where he's trembling. His voice is full of pain and emotion, as if he's carrying the weight of the world. And so he starts singing those famous lines, "Hello, darkness, my old friend." And it just goes right in from there. It captures despair in a way that's almost physical. I feel that the world is too heavy, that nothing we do changes anything, that resistance is pointless. In that version, we can almost feel Elijah and what he felt under the broom tree. He's been on fire for God, confronting kings and prophets, boldly speaking truth to power, and now in the wilderness he says, "It is enough. Take away my life." What a raw moment. Here's Elijah, this man of God, having a very human moment. He was on the mountaintop, and now he's in the valley. Elijah's exhausted. And if we're honest, we know that same exhaustion ourselves. Not just from personal struggles, but from the weight of the world, a world that seems designed to wear us down. The world is exhausting. I don't have to tell you that. That's no surprise to anybody. It's designed to be that way. Not God's design. Let's just be clear about that. God's design is shalom. But humanity's design on the world is exhausting. We get the results of the way it's working. Tyranny, abuse, oppression, political narcissism, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same playbook. Overwhelm, frighten, confuse, drain people so they give up, so they feel alone. Elijah knew this. Jezebel and Ahab, they wielded power violently. The scripture calls Ahab as the most wicked king of the northern kingdom of Israel up to that point. And then it would say that about every single subsequent king. Jezebel, she was a Phoenician princess, so not an original Israelite, but she was a worshiper of Baal, a false god in that region. And she was furious with Elijah. And you may wonder, well, why? This seems kind of rude and whatnot. Well, just a little bit before this, there's a confrontation that Elijah has with the prophets of Baal, the 500 prophets on the mountaintop, and they try to wake up their god Baal, and there's no response. They try cutting themselves, and all throughout this, Elijah is mocking them and taunting them, saying, maybe you should shout louder, maybe he's asleep. Or, get this is real, I'm not making this up. Maybe he's on the toilet and he's busy. It's literally like the taunting that's going on in this. And then they can't get Baal to respond, and so then Elijah has an altar set with fire, and he douses it with extra water and calls on fire down from God. It burns the sacrifice, and then he goes, and it's not just enough to win, he kills the 500 prophets of Baal. That's why Jezebel is a little upset. That's why she wants to kill him. And that's why Elijah runs. He's fearing. He's afraid. He's afraid of her wrath. He's fear of the violence that could come next. This is an old story. Pharaoh enslaved the Israelites. Babylon exiled God's people. Rome executed, crucified Jesus. It's a playbook that's been used often in human history. And today we feel it in new ways. 24-hour news cycle, political speeches that scapegoat and blame entire groups of people, confusing rules and laws that seem impossible to follow, systemic racial and economic injustices that have become almost invisible in everyday life, and the relentless costs of survival, housing, healthcare, education, childcare. All of it conspires to make us tired, anxious, and feel powerless. And so here's Elijah, this man of God, who also got caught up in the cycle of violence and fear. And he acted boldly, confronting the Baal prophets. And now the threat of retaliation comes upon him. Even the strongest among us can be exhausted by the world. Violence begets violence. Fear begets fear. The playbook of the world is relentless and predictable and maddening. But God has a different playbook. When Elijah collapsed, God didn't rebuke him. God cared for him. God fed him. God let him rest. Twice. Shows you how exhausted he is. Angels, we're told, brought bread and water. God gave him permission to pause, to be renewed, to recover. This is the rhythm of God's kingdom. Rest before work. Restoration before mission. Not because Elijah earned it, not because he was productive, not because he had succeeded in confrontation, but because he's beloved, because he bears God's image. And this is the same rhythm we see here at Christ Lutheran. Every meal, every clinic visit, every word of prayer affirms that people matter, that you all matter. Not for what is produced, but for who you all are. I want to share a quick story. We've been doing interviews with folks. We're working with a digital media company to get the word out. And we've been doing interviews with a variety of folks, people who come to the clinics, the nurses, other folks. And one woman said this, that it was just like, just stop the recording right there. This is the statement. When I think of Christ Lutheran in the clinics, I think that this is exactly where I would expect to find Jesus if he were walking the earth today. These are the folks that he spent time with. Wow. That's a powerful statement. That's a statement from God's playbook. God's playbook is consistent across time and space. Rest, restoration, renewal, Sabbath, shalom. Creation and people are valued simply for existing. Empire has always demanded otherwise, but God sees and affirms us. After rest, Elijah travels 40 days, a long time, to Mount Horeb. He expects God to show up in fire and wind and earthquake, the classic signs of power, but God doesn't appear in spectacle, certainly not in noise, not in domination. God appears in silence, a whisper. And here I go back to this theme of the sound of silence. The intensity, the anguish in Disturbed's version mirrors Elijah's experience of despair, exhaustion, and the sense that the world's noise will never stop. And yet in that silence, God speaks. Not in thunder or fire, not in violence or spectacle, but quietly, intimately, patiently. Humanity has always tried to craft God in its own image. Oh, so many times. Loud, controlling, demanding obedience. It ends up getting all sorts of different names. Right now, one of the common names is Christian nationalism. It's just another version of the same thing that's been going on for a long time. But God doesn't need to shout. God's way endures because God's ways are faithful, patient, loving. The whisper is enough. God doesn't leave Elijah in silence, though. God sends him back, not to rest forever, but to act from a place of renewal. This is the rhythm of grace. We don't rest from our work, we work from our rest. Rested and renewed, we can see clearly. We can act differently. We see options. We can resist the exhausting systems of the world without being consumed by them. On this All Saints Sunday, we see this principle lived out across generations. And sometimes it's easy to forget. God has been present in this congregation for more than 135 years. 1890, faithful people founded Christ Lutheran Church, responding to God's call here in Allison Hill. Look different. It's always changing. 1920, they built the sanctuary that we now occupy that needs a lot of TLC. Late 50s, the congregation expanded again to accommodate, ready for this, 3,000 members. Later, the congregation grew diverse, reflecting God's love across differences. I like to say it gives us a broader image, a broader slice of the image of God. By 1990, we all know this, there were only 7 people here. They were faithful, and they are the ones that began the health ministries that are central to what we are about today. And now, today, if you look around, this congregation is very diverse, which is unique among Lutheran congregations. I shouldn't have to say that, but unfortunately it's a truth, but it's a blessing for us. And we get that. God is alive and active here. I mean, look around, there's more than 7 people. God is present in the baptisms that we do. God is present in the meals, in the kids' voices, in the tears, in the joys, the struggles of everyday life. God's even present when we go outside and we give Narcan to somebody who we don't even know. God has been present in every expansion and contraction, in every construction and repair, in every faithful act. And God will continue to be present no matter what lies ahead, no matter how exhausting life is. As I mentioned before, later in the service, we're going to have an opportunity to remember the saints, whether we're talking about the big S saints that the church likes to remember or the small S saints, the people that we knew, the people who impacted us, the people where we were able to see God working through them and into our lives. We'll have an opportunity to light candles, to place a picture if you have one or some other type of item, to remember that on the table, to take a red rose as a symbol of remembrance, to say a prayer, to cry. And that's okay. And we do this to acknowledge that we're part of the larger communion of saints, that we are not alone, that our lives and our loved ones' lives are held in God's presence, and that the whisper of God continues through all generations. The world is going to keep flooding the zone. It'll keep shouting, exhausting, controlling. It'll try to convince us that resistance is pointless, as if the chaos and control are normal and inevitable. But listen, the whisper still speaks. God's playbook is different, thankfully. Sabbath rest, renewal, restoration, valuing life, patient love, abundant grace. Just like a breath of fresh air. God feeds the weary. That's why we're all here. God restores the broken. That's why we're here. God sends us back into the world, confident, joyful, faithful, sometimes still hurting, but knowing that we're not alone, because God's way is life-giving. So here in this sanctuary with candles burning, the photos of saints going to be before us in the quiet presence of God, the sound of silence is not emptiness, and it's not absence. It is God's presence, God's voice, God's promise. Hello, silence. My old friend, I've come to talk with you again. And it's saying that you are beloved. It's God saying to each one of you, I love you. I love you. You're a part of something that stretches across time. You are not alone. And because of that, you can return to what God has called you into the world to be and to do, with strength, with hope, and with love. So go in peace. Work from your rest. Love from your renewal. Whisper the hope of God into a world full of noise. And remember, the whisper endures forever. Thanks be to God. Thank you again for listening to the Sermon Podcast. I'm always happy to have a conversation or pray with you. Please reach out either by email to pastor@christharrisburg.org or call me at 717-236-8382. I'd also invite you to be part of worship on Sunday mornings at 10:30 a.m. We're a very diverse, open, affirming, and laid-back congregation. Christ Lutheran Church is located at 124 South 13th Street in Harrisburg. Parking is along the street. You can enter the building through the side entrance on South 13th Street or at the corner of 13th and Thompson Streets. And lastly, check us out on the web. Our website is christharrisburg.org. There you can learn more about and offer your support for the congregation as well as the health ministries and free clinics that we provide to people in need in our neighborhood. I invite you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram also at Christ Lutheran Harrisburg. Thank you. I look forward to connecting with you, and I pray that you have a blessed week.